Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Yep, it's the world's most dangerous morning show, The Breakfast Club. Charlamagne the God, Angela Yee, DJ Envy is out. And one of my favorite people on the whole planet is here, man. My man Michael Eric Dyson.
Yes, sir.
He got a new book, Jay-Z, Made in America.
Yes, sir.
And a whole course on Jay-Z as well.
That's true, too.
Your timing couldn't be better.
I mean, from your mouth to God's ears.
What is this book about?
Well, you know, as Sister Angela was saying, I've been teaching a course on Jay for like the last decade, and nearly the last decade, I should say. And so I wanted to take what I've been doing in that class and put in the book, because it appeared to me, as it should to anybody, when you're poring over these lyrics, this dude is a rhetorical genius. He has verbal invention. He's got all kind of skills. And the irony is, as great as people think Jay is, he's underrated. He's underrated because they don't understand the mechanics behind what he's doing.
Right.
The kind of poetic rules and inventions, the use of metaphor, simile, how sophisticated it is. And then when you add in there the fact he don't even write it down, right? It'd be one thing if you're writing that stuff down. It's still remarkable and sophisticated. But to know you've got an oral tradition that you're pulling on and that you're using to do what you do, I just said it's pretty remarkable. I've written a book on Tupac. You know, I got the book on Nas's first album, arguably the greatest album in the history of hip-hop.
Illmatic.
Illmatic. And then this book kind of is the finishing of the trilogy of figures who have been incredibly important and influential in the world of hip-hop.
I read Pac. I read Holla If You Hear Me.
Yes, sir.
I read that a long time ago.
Yeah, man.
I don't think I read the Illmatic one, though.
Yeah, the Illmatic is an anthology of 10 different essays that
10 different songs.
to 10 different songs. And I did the one about him, you know, writing a letter, his brother, you know, somebody writing a letter from prison to him, One Love, because my brother, who has since died last year, I had to preach his funeral, died after 30 years in prison, was there, and so that struck me. So yeah, we did a book on that, man. That was pretty dope.
It's interesting. You've been teaching this course at Georgetown for 10 years, and so much has happened in Jay-Z's life in the course of that 10 years. So how do you adjust to that as you come up with your syllabus every year?
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, you got to evolve, you know. And Hov is putting out so much work and putting in so much work and doing so many things, because it's not just the music he's doing, it's what he's doing beyond the culture of hip-hop itself, or it's especially beyond rap. So his business ventures, his engagement in the world, his entrepreneurial, you know, exploits, his criminal justice reform stuff, all of that stuff. And then just the music itself, just the words themselves, the density of his poetic inventiveness is something that I'm preoccupied with. So every time out, you know, we focus on a different aspect or a different level of his creativity and look at new stuff he's done, whether, you know, he might have just gone to, you know, Cuba with Beyonce and he's snapping it back at people who are trying to criticize him. He might be talking about, you know, his, you know, elevation into the Billionaires Club. He might be speaking about a recent social injustice that he needs to address. So there's always fresh fodder for the cannon when it comes to Hov.
How often do you guys communicate with each other?
You know, pretty routinely. You know, the best thing he did for me on this book, people say, well, did you sit down and interview him? No, because I got my ideas. I don't need to interview Hov. I've been thinking about him for a decade. The most amazing thing he did for me was to allow me to quote from these lyrics so that I could stretch out and interpret them. Because, you know, and most publishers are very skittish. Only do half a sentence.
Yeah,
and
you got to
half
pay
a
for
line.
it. Yeah.
You got to pay for it. Copyright. We might get sued. And so I reached out to him. I said, man, can you help a
Can
brother
I live?
Out? God forgive me for my brash delivery, but I remember vividly what these streets did to me. Imagine me allowing you to nitpick at me, portray me like a pickaninny. So, you know, and I had asked him, could he give me permission? And when he signed off, it blew my publisher's minds. But that's why even on the cover, you see the lyrics to the OJ song embossed there. It's a pretty dope cover, I must say.
Yes,
I didn't do it, but it's a pretty nice cover. And we wanted to do something that was worthy of Hov. And on the inside, you can see that Basquiat-influenced kind of artwork on the inside there. So, he gave permission to do that, and that makes a big difference.
Why is the book dedicated to Michael Rubin and Robert Frederick Smith?
Yeah, well, both of them are, interestingly enough, are connected to Jay.
Okay.
On his criminal justice reform, Reform Alliance. And, Michael Rubin was instrumental in helping Meek Mill get out of jail. So for that alone, I got to give you some love.
Yeah.
But then understanding that you got to leverage that to a larger issue that Jay is concerned about. Cash bails are jacked up. The kind of dysfunction of the criminal justice system that saw Meek Mill go in and out of prison for parole violations for a decade for some nonsense when he was a child or a young teen or a teenager. And then, to address that as they used to call them owners, but partners of the Philadelphia 76ers is worthy of that. And Robert Frederick Smith, when you go to Morehouse and drop $40 million on him.
Yes, sir.
And say, look, I'm going to take care of your bills.
Yes, sir.
And your future is vouchsafed and it's secure as a result of what this gesture is about. I got to show love and respect. So both of them are connected to that Reform Alliance, but both of them have done significant things to advance the ball in terms of advocating for the future of young black men in America and young black people.
What has Jay-Z gotten right in this whole NFL situation, and what has he gotten wrong?
Well, look, I think that, people say, oh, he sold out. He just messed up. He first of all, he's rocking the Colin Kaepernick jersey, and then he turns around and he's telling other artists not to be involved in the Super Bowl, and then he turns around and he's advising them, and he's cutting a deal. I think what people misunderstand is that you got to have a three-point shooter and you got to have baseline. You got to have Steph Curry and you got to have LeBron going in and jamming the ball. And you got to have people occupying both spaces, inside, outside. Martin Luther King Jr. standing outside, I have a dream, criticizing the social injustices that prevail. But then Martin Luther King Jr. going inside with Lyndon Baines Johnson, the president, and saying, how do we craft the Civil Rights Bill of 1964? How do we craft legislation for the Voting Rights Act? Now, the Voting Rights Act is brought into existence not because of the good graces of the presidency or the desire, even though LBJ wanted to do that, but he wanted to have a social condition that prevailed, a political pressure brought to bear to make it sensible to do so. That's how things work. You remember that famous story that Harry Belafonte loves to tell, that FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was the president back in the mid part of the 20th century, is having lunch with A. Philip Randolph and I think Mary McLeod Bethune. And he said, look, I agree with everything you're out there protesting about. Now make me do it. So go out there, raise enough consciousness, put enough pressure that I have no other recourse but then to do what is necessary to do to sign legislation. King understood that.
Yes, sir.
Stokely Carmichael understood that.
Yes, sir.
Ida B. Wells earlier understood that, and certainly so many other, Septima Clark, Joanne Robinson, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, and the like. So the point is, you got to have both and, not either or. And so when Jay-Z is out putting pressure on the NFL, people don't give him credit for this. That the fact that he said, don't go do the Super Bowls and halftime shows, and look, we in stadiums too.
Yeah, NFL needs me. We don't need them. Yeah.
We in stadiums too. That puts pressure. They didn't just do it because of the goodness of their hearts. They saw this man wield significant economic influence and cultural power, and as a result of that, the pushback was genuine and palpable. So now they invite him in to have a conversation. What's he supposed to go? No, I want you to do right. Oh, but I'm not going to tell you what I think is right. Well, if I tell you what you're doing is wrong, and then you invite me into the conversation to say what's right, I got to sit down and tell you. If your wife rolls up on you, what you're doing is jacked up. Well, I'm sorry. Can you help me do better? Sure. Let me tell you X, Y, and Z. So the thing is, to have maybe a weak analogy, but one that is relevant. So for me, Jay-Z going inside is really responding to the pressure he brought to bear on the outside. And sitting down talking about either the acts that are going on at halftime, all right, but the social justice agenda. And do we really doubt that Colin Kaepernick, whatever you think of that, Colin Kaepernick, a bold, amazing, iconic social justice figure would never have had an opportunity to even have what is now a botched, tryout and audition for the NFL without Jay-Z bringing pressure to bear. Now, the people who were critical of Jay said, well, damn, you think at least he could have done is got my man a job. First of all, that ain't how it works. Are you not understanding of how it works? Roger Goodell, who is the commissioner, can't even go to a team and make them do it. No. But can they leverage authority? Yeah. Can they say, wink, wink, nod, nod? Come on, bruh. Let's do something for this guy. Jay-Z is putting enormous pressure. You know, Roger Goodell, if he wanted to do that, he would have done so before Jay-Z came on the scene.
Absolutely.
So we know Jay-Z's presence was significant there. We know that Jay-Z leveraged his political and cultural capital, so to speak, to be able to provide this opportunity for a Colin Kaepernick. So for me, it's the inside versus outside dichotomy that we've got to reckon with, and we got to stop the hate. If you disagree with me, then I'm a coon. Then I'm a sellout. I'm not saying that there are not people who have done dastardly things in the name of racial duty and who deserve to be called out or at least called to account. But the ready resort to trying to beat people up and you a coon and you know what? You cooning somebody today and you going to be coon the next day.
Well,
you canceling somebody today, you going to get canceled yourself the next day.
Yeah, and they did the same thing to MLK Jr. They called him a coon. They called him a sellout.
But
he died depressed with anxiety. Like,
oh my God! And he was called a sellout by Malcolm X, who people elevate. Malcolm, whom I love and adore, Malcolm X, who grew, who said that King was the greatest weapon the white man has ever had. He was a Tom talking about King, and then he's basically canceling King, and then he gets canceled because some of his own fellow black believers
called him a
believe
traitor.
that he's a traitor to the cause.
Yeah.
Dude, once you get down that slippery slope, ain't no ending to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's problematic. You know, I'm not with the variety of the recent criticisms of cancel culture about purity. You know who I'm talking about, like, beating up on young black people. Young black people have been amazing. The brilliant reaction and rebellion and righteous resistance to social injustice is beautiful. Using social media to do so is beautiful. And furthermore, studies have been shown that people who are active on social media are also likely to be active beyond social media. So this notion that, you're just your Twitter fingers, even though some people have them, or you're posting up on Instagram, and that's true too, the likelihood is that there is a correlation between the two activities. So I don't beat up on young people for that. What I beat up on people for, at least call them to account, is the intolerance. Like, give people, let's have some ethical patience. Let's see how things work out. Let's at least grant somebody the possibility that they're acting in good faith, even if I fundamentally disagree with them. So I'm not trying to beat up on anybody and say, hey, what you're saying is wrong or that you shouldn't have criticism. I've lived my life writing 21 books as a social and cultural critic. I believe in criticism, but that's engaged and informed. Some people going off half-cocked, don't know what you're talking about, ain't got no sense of history, don't know what happened 5 years before you were born, don't know what happened 10 days ago, and yet now on Twitter, you become a world historical Hegelian figure who wields knowledge that is so devastating that you can speak on anything and everything without competence, insight, wisdom, or consideration. That, I think, is problematic.
What do you think about Stephen A. Smith's take on Colin Kaepernick not actually conforming to what the NFL wanted him to do?
Well, look, Stephen A. Smith is a friend of mine. I'm friendly with Colin Kaepernick. I love and adore him. And I think, look, what Stephen A. Smith was trying to suggest is that in the context of what the NFL is. First of all, we know they messed up. We know they jacked up. We know they took a job from you that you shouldn't have had taken from you. You know this, right? And that's not a mystery. The fact that Colin Kaepernick even has to be in this position is fundamentally unjust. The fact that he has to be begging for something, not begging, asking for something, an opportunity to show that he is capable of performing in the NFL when he didn't, because of his own merit, fail to do that, because it wasn't his arm wasn't good. It wasn't that now true enough, he had some troubles when he was starting and he was benched in favor of somebody else and so on. That's all true. But the man still wields tremendous talent and is better than half the people starting right now. And certainly the people they go on the street and find and bring into the NFL because they're desperate for a quarterback. So there's no question that the white supremacist outlook and mindset and worldview and Weltanschauung and every other word you can generate of these owners that prevents them from understanding that their own bigotry and bias will keep Colin Kaepernick on the sidelines is a serious issue that cannot be dismissed. Having said that, when you walk in the door, you know that. You know who your enemy is. You know who you're dealing with. Are they going to give you a fair shot? And this is the tradition, if I can say that some black people, including Stephen A. Smith, come from. Here's the position. Black people always against the odds. It ain't never fair. Right? Martin Luther King Jr. could forget a waiver on a contract. Now, I'm not saying that that's not important, right? Because if the waiver being signed was to suggest that somehow you would surrender your right to be able to sue in the future or to accuse people of further collusion, right? That's idiotic. Ain't nobody trying to do that. But the broader issue is this. Pharaoh will never provide you a scholarship for freedom, right? The people who are your enemies and your opponents will never grant you even the fair conditions for you to compete. But the best of our people have competed against the odds. Was it fair for Jackie Robinson to have to live the way he did? No. Was it right? No. Did he do it? Yes. Should we have to? No. Should Colin Kaepernick have to exist by a kind of segregated Jim Crow law in the modern era in 2019 when we've had, voting rights for black people in the South since 1965? No. No. But is white supremacy still real? Yes. Does it amplify within the cauldrons of, the NFL and American institutional culture and corporate culture? Absolutely. So the thing is, knowing that going in the door, you don't never expect them to be fair. You demand, you request, but you go out there and show, you know what? Even with your funky, foul, nefarious tricksterism, I'm going to show you I can toss this rock, I can chuck this pill, I can throw this pigskin, and I can do what's necessary to do. Put the burden back on them. And then if they don't hire you, even though we know now he still can play, they already know that. If they don't hire you, that's on them. That's up to them. So I think there's a tradition of black response. And I know a lot of black people, oh my God, this is the politics of respectability and you're trying to prove that you're twice as good just to compete. I'm sorry. I'm 61 years old. That's the generation I'm from, right? Is it fair that at Georgetown, many students come to me who are not in my classes, who have never taken a class from me, who are not my immediate students, who want advice and insight and counseling? Is that what I'm paid for? No. Is that my job? Yes. Is that my responsibility? Yes. Is that what I'm supposed to do? Yes. Is it extra? Yes. Do I get paid? No. But that's what I understand the job to be. So, and it's difficult to have this conversation in public because these are the kind of conversations that were had before. We think they're new. I mean, they were debating this, should we march today or not? Should we use this strategy or not? The younger people were pissed at King. Snick was mad at him. He comes to town, he gets all the press. He comes to town and everybody's focused on him. The camera's on him.
Talking about in Chicago.
Right, in Chicago or at the March on Selma, wherever King went. They called him DeLawd behind his back. They were signifying on him, right? They were joking. They were trying to clown him because he liked silk pajamas. Let me see. His life is being threatened every day. 28 days of the year, 28 days of the month, most of the time, he's on the road. His health is a wreck. When they did the autopsy for his body, it said he had the heart of a 65-year-old man, and he was 39. He suffered, as you already alluded to clinical depression. He gave 370 some odd speeches a year and ain't but 365 days in the year. He gave up his money from his book, from his royalties to his alma mater. And he gave most of his money that he got from speaking to the movement. And he wanted silk pajamas, and you're going to clown him? He's going to get canceled? If Martin Luther King Jr. were alive today, he'd be canceled 50 times.
1,000,000 times.
Right? So my point is that, yes, there is a thing such as loving Colin Kaepernick, supporting Colin Kaepernick, wanting him to do the best and the right thing, and suggesting this. You could tighten up some of your strategy, too. There's a way in which you might approach this that might be different. Now, this is not to put the burden on him, like you do the right thing, and then the NFL is let off the hook. No. But we know we're living in a white supremacist society where the patent unfairness and hypocrisy is pervasive. So knowing that going in the door, be armed to be able to compete and to deal with this. This is why, by the way, when Martin Luther King Jr. and other figures in his branch of the movement were involved, they were rigorously trained. They were taught principles. They were taught about social injustice, how to deal with potential scenarios that would prevail that allowed them to be able to do their best on the battlefield.
I'm going to tell you something, man. I agree with a lot of what you said, most of it. And if I was capped this week and I would have saw that waiver where they was trying to get me to sign over my rights to, not be able to sue them in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And if they would have gave me an ultimatum that said, hey, I don't know if this is true or not, but they said they gave me an ultimatum that said, take it or leave it, you got 2 hours.
Right.
I'd have said, fuck them.
Of course. I mean, who wouldn't do that?
So you wouldn't have held the other tryout?
No.
Okay.
And if I did hold the other tryout, I would have only held it as for attention. So when I got in front of them cameras, I put them on blast for that waiver.
Well, see, that's the thing. See, here's the part of the problem. The NFL is saying one thing about the waivers. They're swearing up and down. That's not what it is, right? It's being misrepresented.
They're saying it was a
Capside
standard waiver.
Of course, and Capside is saying something else. So we don't really know.
Well, they showed. I saw an article yesterday where they showed the standard waiver and the
Right.
waiver Cap got. It was definitely more language in Cap's waiver.
Well, no doubt. And the bottom line is, beyond the waiver, the man has been mistreated. Ain't nobody else getting subject to what he's being subject
That's right.
to. So it's criminal at that level. There's no question about that. But that's different from us then trying to figure out what is the strategic response. And we don't have to be sellouts because we say, hey, there's a way in which you can do it. Is it wrong to say, hey, Cap, it might be good that when people are trying to get at you who know stuff about this, you could respond to them, right? Now, let me give you an example. I love Colin Kaepernick. I was at the Tyler Perry event.
Yes, sir.
The big shindig.
Yes, sir.
And when Beyonce thanked me for, showing love to them all the time. After that, I don't know really what happened.
I went home.
I'm just not sure. If their time stopped moving, if the float of eternity had descended with, powerful and poetic intensity, stop hating. So the thing is that Kaepernick came up to me and said, look, man, I'm going to have to straighten you out about what's going on. I said, cool. I'm available, right? I said, but Cap, I'll be texting you.
You don't reply back.
You give me a text when you want me to be your PR guy to tell what's going on in the world. But when I'm trying to get at you to interview you, I've defended Kaepernick in my last 3 books. In Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America, and What Truth Sounds Like, Robert F. Kennedy, James Baldwin, and the Unfinished Conversation on Race in America. And now in this book on Jay-Z, I love and adore him. I admire him. But I think that there's a way in which we could talk honestly behind the scenes about things. Now, it ain't got to be me. And Miss Nessa, a lovely, brilliant, wonderful woman, his partner, said, hey, I want to talk to you. I called both of them, ain't got no response. Now, I'm not trying to put them on blast. That ain't my point. Because you ain't got to call Mike or Eric Dyson. But I'm saying talk to people, and I hope you are, in your community. But is it wrong to say we can talk off stage, off the phone, behind the scenes, so I could offer whatever I do? I kind of do this for a living. I've written 21 books. I've been teaching for 30 years. I'm out here in these streets. I'm doing what I do. I'm saying I do have something, and people usually pay me a bunch of money for that. I'm trying to offer it to you for free. You ain't got to take my advice, but I'm saying engage. But don't be upset then in the public sphere and square when I have to then talk about there could be alternatives to strategic intervention.
Because you haven't heard from him firsthand.
I can't do it.
I think it's hard for Colin and Nessa to trust people at this moment.
I can understand.
Look, and I get it. They get a lot of death threats, and especially I think this whole situation with Jay-Z, it divided the culture in a way that it shouldn't have had to.
And look, I'm not reprimanding them in the least. I'm not suggesting that they are somehow callous or indifferent. The death threats, look, for 30 years.
Oh, I know.
Right, I've been doing. You do it. Right? So I'm sure it's been exacerbated in his case, and the evil and the malign assault upon him and the resentment that a black man would be uppity, would stand up against white supremacy and social injustice, and then leverage his own career in defense of his principles. It is remarkable and powerful. At the same time, if you're challenging me about you want to straighten me out, and I call you to get straightened out, and you don't straighten me out, dog, that ain't on me. I'm saying, and I love you, and I'm saying this now because I would rather say it into the phone. I would rather, when people say, why can't you call him? I did, right? And listen here, that doesn't mean, therefore, because I didn't hear from you, I'm going to be principled in my response regardless.
You're just going to speak on what you know from what you've
I'm going to speak
researched.
on what I believe, what I know, what I think, how I reflect, the understanding of how this stuff has operated in the past, the ways in which leaders have clashed and disagreed. This ain't the first time. Cancel culture didn't invent it. It just amplifies it more. It makes it more immediate. And people are weighing in. They're tweeting, they're texting, they're Facebooking, they're Instagramming, they're, whatever other social media they are, Snapchatting and FaceTiming or whatever to try to communicate ideas, which is great. The democratization of media culture is an instantaneous rebuff to those who would wield the power against the masses. At the same time, it also mandates that we really be well-informed and deeply involved with an understanding historically, politically, socially, and economically about what's happening. It doesn't mean we're going to agree. It doesn't mean because you are understanding of all this history that you still can't disagree with another person. It just means that your differences are informed and considered, and as a result of that, we can have more productive conversations.
You know what I wanted to ask you about? Well, honestly, I wish Cap would just say fuck the NFL. That's number one. I wish he would just be like, I don't want to play no more. I know, but
look at you. If somebody did that to you and they say, I just wish Charlamagne would just say radio.
That's his life.
I would start a podcast. I wouldn't beg iHeart to keep me on.
You starting a podcast is different than him starting
a whole league. Yeah.
Come on, dog.
I'm just saying, man, it comes a point in time where you have to have some integrity about yourself.
He has tremendous integrity.
And stop kind of like knocking on these white people's door when you know they don't want to let you in.
Well, all of us are knocking on the white man's door.
Are we?
Is this a black-owned radio station?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not knocking, though. But if
you ain't got to knock. Look how easy it is. Okay. They're coming to get you. You ain't got to knock. They're coming to get you.
All I'm simply saying is if they kicked me out, right, for 3 years.
That's theory.
They kicked me out for 3 years.
You ain't got no money to support your family. Your wife looking at you.
He got money, though.
Oh, he got money, but I'm saying.
But it's what he's passionate about. He grew up, and this is his life, like football. He wants to play in the NFL.
Dude, he's got skill.
Yes.
He was doing the biceps. He is Kaepernick. He was one throw from winning the Super Bowl. This is what he's born to do. If somebody tells me, Dyson, you can't speak, you can't teach, I'm going to go teach on the side road somewhere. That's cool, but why deny me a legitimate opportunity to speak in a classroom that I've earned a degree for, and the only reason I can't do it to ply my wares and to practice my craft is because of some arbitrary racist refusal to acknowledge me? That would go down real tough, man.
I think what we're seeing right now is the suffering that comes from arguing with reality. Because I think Colin Kaepernick is bigger than football. I think he stands for more than what football is.
And it might be his greatest gift.
That's what I'm saying. Sometimes you got to pay attention to how God has pushed you in another direction. And especially after last week, they gave him that waiver that clearly shows they're still trying to collude against him.
But let me tell you something.
I would have gave them the middle finger and been like, F y'all, if y'all Negroes still watching the NFL, y'all really are some sellouts.
Well, here's the thing. In the dark, the divine and the demonic feel the same. How you know that's God, right? Right. Remember, Jacob was wrestling with the angel. And it said Jacob wrestled all night long until the morning. Why did he wrestle until the morning? Because sometimes in the dark, the devil and God feel the same. They do the same stuff. They push you. They irritate you. They make you mad. You don't know. So what you think is God could be evil, and what you think is evil could be God. Remember, Joseph with the coat of many colors said, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. But at the moment that you're the recipient of and the object of derision and scorn, that stuff is awful tough to take. It might be God speaking, but it sounds like the devil's voice you hear. So all of us have to struggle with what God's intent is for our lives. We don't know until later on. Maybe now he will understand, but that's not for me to say. Look, Dick Gregory was a great comedian. But after a while, Dick Gregory is missing so many gigs because he's out here protesting.
Activism word.
That he had to finally make a decision. I got to lead the comedy and do social activism. Maybe in the long run, he was a better social activist than he was a comedian, and he understood his gift. Richard Pryor stayed with the comedy and used his platform to articulate his vision of social reconstruction through his lyrical imagination. So, or Bill Cosby, for that matter, when he was just seen as a great comedian. So you've got to understand what your gift is, what your time is, what your opportunity is, and that's not for us to say. But as he wrestles with it in his own spirit, you can imagine the injustice. I have every ability to play, every skill. I'm better than half these dudes I'm looking at, and I'm being denied. Yeah, I got money, but money ain't what I play for. I play for the pleasure of fulfilling my destiny, right? We can't both tell people don't ever do anything. Well, wait a minute. We can't tell people don't play for something just to do it for money. Do something. I used to tell my son, do something you would do for free in life and then find a way to get paid for it. That's fulfillment, right? Like writing books. I can't believe they paid me. Right. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't want my editors to hear this or my publishers. But at school, you mean they pay me to get before a class and explore ideas from Du Bois to Derrida, from Foucault to feminist theory to queer theory, to talk about the black church? You mean they're like giving me a paycheck for that? Or I can go to church and preach? So that's my soul's bounty. That's the fulfillment of my ideals.
Right.
And if you take that away from me and say, well, you got $2 million, but $2 million ain't what I want. What I want is to fulfill my life purpose. And whether I'm making $1 billion or whether I make a dime.
Mike, you don't think his life's purpose, his destiny seems greater than football?
There's no question about that.
Yeah.
But he's got, look.
That's on
But
him.
he's got to decide that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Dr. King Dr. King said, man, what I want to do, I'd like to go to be a dean at Morehouse College of Religion and chill out and write some books.
All right.
But he said, the battering rams of historical necessity, right? Quoting Rhino Newber, have pushed me into this place. And so, again, I would hesitate to say to Colin Kaepernick, clearly your destiny is X, Y, and Z. Because the attempt and effort that he's making and being rejected in public is an object lesson for somebody looking. So maybe God's purpose is for us to see the public exposure of the shenanigans, the hypocrisy, and the incredible manipulations that are going on, which are just as effective as him occupying a slot on an NFL team and doing what he's got to do. We don't know. But we can't impose that. All we can do is derive meaning and benefit and advantage from what we see going on. And I would never presume to tell Colin Kaepernick what to do with his life. I support him with whatever he does. I just want us to be strategic in our assistance to him and our cooperation with him and trying to figure out the best route to redemption in this moment.
Let me ask you, I want to ask you two questions about two people. Jay-Z, number one, right? If I'm Jay-Z right now and you see the waiver that was in Cap's contract, you see they tried to get him to sign his rights away to suit him in the future. How do you handle that? If you're Jay-Z.
Jay-Z is not going to, look, I'm a businessman. I'm not a businessman, so let me handle my business then. Jay-Z is the first person going to say, I ain't with that BS, right?
Yeah.
There's no question. The question is, I wish we could get clarity about what it is. The NFL has sworn, and there are some good people within that organization who claim, right, Righteous Brothers and others who claim, no, that's not what it is. And then Kaepernick's people are saying yes. And, of course, most of us in public are going to go get down with Kaepernick versus that. But I'd like to see it. I would like for us to have an honest reckoning with what's in there, number one. And then, number two, think about it. Jay-Z's a hustler, man. That's where he started, right? And hustlers, like making a way out of no way, right? Right. The hustle in the most edifying sense. I quote a guy in this book, Walter McDougall, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning historian, white conservative historian, used to be my colleague at University of Pennsylvania. He says the central motif of American history is hustling. Oh, Jay had it right all along. A Pulitzer Prize winner said it. We heard that on Reasonable Doubt, right? And so hustling, Professor McDougall says, is, both the good and bad version. Right? The go get 'em, the Nipsey Hussle kind. I'm prolific, so gifted. I'm the kind of go get it. No kidding. Right? You got that kind. And then you got the kind of scufflaws, the illegal people. You got the guy at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the supreme hustler in the most malignant sense of the word. So both of those meanings are balanced in an appreciation for the American soul. Jay-Z tapped into that genius. Black hustling has often been demonized in America. But black people had to hustle because the illegitimate means weren't available to us. But America, as Killer Mike told me, began with a great crime, right? Others have said it as well. He just put it more poetically. And it begins in a crime, and every family that's ever risen in this country has been built on criminality. So Jay-Z understands that they ain't gonna never make you fair, homie. You got to take the means of expression and use it to your advantage. So you can imagine a guy like him being, quote, disappointed that F what these people are saying or doing. Now, you don't want to sign your future away. But short of that, I don't care if they told you the field was 25 yards and they gave you half a pigskin. You so cold as Colin Kaepernick, go out there and show them what half a football field or the 1/4 of a football field and half a football that you can still do it because you do have those kind of skills. In other words, the historic black obligation has been, no matter what white supremacy presents as a limitation or an option, you transform it, transfigure it through the genius of your black expression. Now, I know a lot of people say, no, that's not right, and he should be treated fairly. Of course he should, ideally, but we dealing with folk we know already ain't going to be fair.
I agree with you. And
that
I think
could have been a
that's
setup,
challenge
though,
it.
with as far as with the filming, where they said he couldn't have his own camera crew, and the NFL would be in charge of that. Imagine they put it out,
Of course.
and it looked like
And
everything.
then they tried to say, but the NFL came back and said, we said you can have the uncut footage. You can have raw footage. So whatever we manipulate, you can also have it. So you can see there's distrust, which is understandable on the part of Colin Kaepernick for the NFL. But if we're going to try to be fair about it, and see, these are the niceties of interpretation that get rather ugly, because then it looks like, oh, are you trying to give balance to the NFL over Colin Kaepernick? What are you doing? You're a sellout. No, we're trying to say simply this. We already know going in the door that the people who have been mistreating us will not suddenly treat us fairly. But if we have an opportunity to showcase our wares in order to make a bigger argument, then do so. Was Jack Johnson treated fairly? Look at how they called those fights.
Yeah.
Look at what they said about him. Look at how they try to take it away from him. Was Muhammad Ali treated fairly? No. And I'm not saying we should therefore replicate that. We should have advantage. I'm just saying the history and the legacy of black response to social and economic and racial inequality has been the beefing up of a black response that, in the face of white supremacy and injustice and hypocrisy, shows that we have not only a more powerful humanity, but a more powerful determination to prove them wrong.
And, you know, I agree. Jay-Z said financial freedom is our only hope. And that's another reason I think that you got to have multiple streams of income. So you're never in a situation. I know this is not a black-owned radio station.
Right.
But if they tell me I got to kick rocks, cool. And I'm not going to be out here like, oh, why you don't want me no more, man?
Of
like
course.
Will Smith in Fresh Prince when he's looking for his daddy. I'm not, you know?
Wow.
That's just my thing.
Right. No, well, look, all of us think we'd like to think that. All of us like to think we'd like to think that.
Until we get in a situation.
Until your mortgage do. And then,
Once again, you got to have multiple streams of income. That's what I'm saying.
That's when you know what's coming. Imagine Colin Kaepernick didn't even know it was coming.
Yeah,
it rolled up on him.
Yeah.
Like that. Like, I'm going to opt out of my contract. I'm going to go get an option, then I'm going to move on. Oh, you cut me off? So look at, and he still gave $1 million of his $19 million.
That's right.
To charity. So, the man is remarkable in many ways. So you're right, though. But see, that's what I'm saying. It's both and, not either or. What you're saying is absolutely right. It's not that I disagree with you. I agree with you full-fledged.
Right.
But at the same time, I think that, on the one hand, we have multiple streams of income. We don't be going hat in hand. We ain't begging, which is what he did, right? He said, I'm not going to beg. I'm going to show up at the thing. I ain't, Massa, can you give me another opportunity? No, he's not with that. But at the same time, is it also good to have skill, have game, have prudence, have strategy? Try to figure out. Now, in part he did, because the reason he was able to, at the last minute, go to a place 60 miles outside, you're already thinking about what happens if, plan B, if they mess up. What I would have ideally loved to have seen was him go up in there again. If it wasn't, this waiver, if that was not in place,
if he wasn't signing away all his rights to sue later.
If that's true, right? If he could roll up in there and go, all right, bet, that's what you want. Give me the rock, give me the ball, right? I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do with it, and turn the place out. And black talent and genius has often created opportunity where none other could be imagined, right? Proverbs says a man's gift or a woman's gift will make a way for itself. So there is a way in which black genius has created necessity where white resistance cannot prevail. And so white folk don't want to give you no opportunity, but what you going to do? What you going to do when you see a Paul Robeson coming? They tried to deny him, right? But then there was another one behind him. Then you got the first black ball players, right? Think about it. The first black professional ball player in the NBA died 2 years ago. I don't know if you heard me. The first black ball player for the National Basketball Association, Mr. Earl Lloyd, died 2 or 3 years ago.
Wow.
That means in your lifetime, the first dude who played ball for the NBA died. That means before him, there wasn't no Negroes, right? And so they created opportunity. They were trailblazers. They were forebears. They opened up spaces. And let's be real. Let's have a critical analysis here. A lot of people jump on Jay. I get it. He's like anybody else. Anybody can be criticized. Me, you, anybody. Do we have any critique for loving, constructive criticism? If we got for the other side. If we could say to Colin Kaepernick, man, you come from a people where the odds were so impossible, they wish they had a damn waiver. They wish all they had to deal with was the size of the football field and if the cameras were going to be there and how fair it was. Because in their world, they didn't even have a legitimate shot. They couldn't show up. The racism was so thick. They couldn't stay in the same hotel. They denied them the opportunity to apply their craft until such a time. Jackie Robinson couldn't stay with his teammates. They had to go to black hotels and black space, right? All of that. Like the stuff they had to overcome just to compete. And so some would say, relatively speaking, you got a $19 million contract, you got Nike dough, you got a lot of endorsements, and you should. Then there is that mitigating factor then that allows you to step up into the arena and say, I'm going to do what I got to do to knock this thing out the park. So those are the kinds of histories, legacies, and traditions from which black people emerge that have to be brought to bear. And no simple conversation about, oh, you know, you're a sellout because you said this, and you're a sellout because you agree with this, and you're a sellout because you think he should have an alternative strategy, or you're a sellout because you might have some constructive criticism about what might be being done. And if your goal is X, Y, and Z, let me help you achieve it. That's healthy. That's beautiful. Now, a lot of black people say, well, why can't we do it in public? When the last time you've been invited to a black meeting? Where the hell is it? Where the hell is the black meeting? Is it the NAACP? All Negroes ain't members of that. Is it the Urban League? Ain't members of that. Is it the crack house? Everybody can't get in. So my point is...
There was a secret one a couple weeks ago.
Okay, I see. That lets you know that I'm a sellout yellow Negro, and I did not get invited.
No,
All
you probably
Drake,
did.
Drake!
And we need to have more of them.
Well, you know what?
We do.
Invite
We
me to
do.
the next one.
We
But
do.
here's my point. Let me tell you what. There ain't no black meeting. That's the point. They're black meetings.
Right.
Clarence Thomas ain't gonna never get invited to the meeting you at. And he ain't inviting you to his, trust me.
Yeah.
So the point is, the mythology of the necessity for uniformity and unity among black people undercuts the vibrant diversity and the rambunctious complexity of our existence. What I mean? All of us ain't got to be on the same page and believe the same thing in order for us to understand that we got to be in the communities that love and appreciate us and move forward. Cool. You don't like Martin Luther King Jr.? Bet. Deal with Malcolm. You don't like Malcolm? Cool. Deal with Stokely. You don't like Stokely? Cool. Ida B. Wells Barnes. You don't like her? Fannie Lou Hamer. You don't like her? Ella Baker. You don't like them? SNCC. You don't like them? Urban League. You don't like whatever. You don't like the black church? Be in the temple, the mosque, the synagogue. You don't like God? Do it yourself. The point is, find a community that reinforces your values, that are edifying and uplifting, and then therefore, in an ad hoc fashion, move forward with your vision and social imagination intact, trying to make a difference in the world. Don't hate on nobody else.
That's real.
Right? In the Bible, Paul and Silas and all them Timothy, look, we got a part. You on your path, I'm on mine. You don't like T.D. Jakes, listen to Freddie Haynes. You don't like Freddie Haynes, right? Listen to Damon Glenn.
Listen to Farrakhan.
Come on, listen to Mr. Farrakhan. If you don't like Farrakhan, my brother, in the way in which, right? And let me tell you about Minister Farrakhan. Now, Minister Farrakhan invited me to his house, right? This was years and years ago. I was like, well, damn, what I do? I said, because I said, the first thing I said, Minister Farrakhan, I have been very critical of you. I've been critical of you about what I perceive to be anti-Semitic rhetoric, and I've been critical of you about the homophobia that I think is in your rhetoric, right? I ain't gonna lie to him. I'm at his crib. I'm hoping this ain't the last time I'm gonna be seen. And he said, my brother, how can we love and engage each other if we do not in love correct each other? So if you share with me your particular perspective and you, mine, then we have the possibility of overcoming. 4 hours.
That's
4
it.
hours, right?
That's it.
I got real differences. I got real critiques, but the possibility of opening up, at least to talk about what those might mean. His critiques of me, my critiques of him, and together we figure out this ain't my community. That ain't your tribe. All your skin folk ain't your kinfolk.
Word.
And instead of calling me a sellout, instead of saying he's a dumbass, instead of getting on my page Start your own page.
That's it.
Instead of dogging my book, write your own damn book.
That's it.
Instead of dogging the movie, Harriet, are you kidding? So we fight for years to get Harriet made. And I know some black people say, well, there's a manipulation and this is what happens. There's a white savior in the film. I said, did you see it? No, but I heard. People would do that to me all the time with my books. I heard what you said. And I had to come up with a Jesse Jackson-like rhyme. If my book you do not read, do not attempt to make me bleed. If you ain't read the book,
shut the fuck up.
Right.
Hello. Hello. I sound like Jerry Lewis. Hello.
That's the social media era, though.
But Doc, it was before social media, too.
Yeah,
I ain't gonna lie. Ignorance is ignorance in the 1900s, in the 2000s. Okay? If you stupid and dumb and uninclined toward enlightenment, social media only manifests it more clearly and more immediately. It doesn't invent it. So for me, I think it's extremely important for us to understand that Harriet Tubman, well, she's a British black actress. She's Nigerian, right? She's from West Africa. So here's my point. Harriet Tubman was one generation removed from Africa.
That's right.
West Africa. Cynthia Erivo has a more legitimate right to play her than a whole lot of, quote, American actresses who ain't from Africa directly. Right? Why is it that? And if you can name all the British people taking over, you're killing your point. Because if they're named, it ain't that many. Right? Can Denzel play a British person? He has. Can he play Caribbean? He has, with Robert Townsend, one of my favorite movies. Right? Can Jeffrey Wright, is he Dominican? Right? Is he Dominican? I don't think so. Is Al Pacino, just to have an odd, is he Cuban? Say hello to my little friend.
Nobody said nothing. We put that picture,
oh
that
my
poster
God.
right on our wall.
I mean, a lot of Latino people did, but at the same time, you're right. Right? We ain't saying it right. I mean, so my only problem is this younger generation thinks Scarface is better than Godfather. Please stop the madness.
Shit, Scarface ain't Nino Brown, if you ask me.
I mean, it ain't Nino Brown, but and number one is better than number two. Other young people like number two, but when you got Brando sitting there, why didn't you come to me first? My God. Stop the cameras. The dude has killed the scene. But anyway, so the point is, let's understand that you find your tribe where you are. All black people will not agree. All black people should not be unified because, look, I used to have a radio show. Call in. Black people call in. We need unity, Dr. Dyson. I said, yes, right on. Next call. We need unity. And then I say, all right, cool. So we going to have the gay people in? No, see what? See what? See, that's wrong. Dude, you're going to unify at the expense of an asterisk. Except for the gay people. Straight, lesbian, bisexual, transgender. Except for them. It's always an exception. Mm-hmm. And when you have an asterisk, it's because your ass ain't at risk. Ooh. And you miss out on understanding just how complicated things are when you are automatically excluded. Your body is, from the beginning, seen as illegitimate because you're gay or because you're trans or because you don't conform to the dominant perspective of what we think is appropriate or righteous. I have fought this my entire life. I tried to ordain 3 women as deacons when I was a young preacher, 23 years old in Tennessee, got put out of the church. The black church. I love the black church. Robert McAfee Brown said the church is like Noah's Ark. If it wasn't for the storm on the outside, you couldn't stand the stink on the inside.
Ooh.
So there's a lot of stink in the inside of the church, but there's a lot of storm outside, which is why, to me, Jay-Z, the reason I wrote this book, the reason I celebrate his, transition from hustler on the street to hustler in the corporate scene, the reason I celebrate his poetic genius, the reason I celebrate his politics. Jay-Z didn't start in politics when he joined with Obama. Right, he was talking on his records all the time, but he was combining. He knew on his first album, I gave him serious revelation and prophecy, and they ain't feeling it like that. Mm-hmm. Same way with Nas, right? So you got to figure out, I got to get my message through in a way when the remy's in the system, ain't no telling. I got to quote Biggie, but then I got to get in Bin Laden been happening in Manhattan, right? Talking about anthrax. He said back when the police was Al-Qaeda to black men, he's sneaking that in to some big pimping. Because he understands that you can't give medicine straight. You got to get the castor oil with sugar.
That's right.
Right? You got to give the hard lesson with honey. So Jay-Z has brilliantly fused and merged the impulse toward poetic genius and understanding the marketplace in an unparalleled fashion. And so this book celebrates that genius. And here's the thing, too. Let's just say you think Jay is wrong. Let's just say you think Jay is out of bounds what he's doing. You going to cancel a dude who's been out here for 30 years?
Yeah, I don't understand.
For 30 years.
Who has cachet in the culture? If you
And let's be real, you can't cancel nobody. If you want to cancel somebody, cancel Donald Trump. And if you cancel Donald Trump, I'll be with your cancel culture then. If you can literally cancel Donald Trump, because you don't have the ability. All cancel means is you withhold your assent toward a particular phenomenon, as I talk, or a social fact or reality, or you don't give affection to, or public displays of support of. I get all that. But the impulse toward cancel, to me, as I've said before, is a white supremacist ethic. It is white supremacy that wants to cancel. Black folk have wanted to redeem. Let's have a redemptive culture.
Ooh.
Let's have a trade-in culture. Trade in the old for the new. Let's have a culture that understands that people make mistakes and that the very people wanting to do the canceling can themselves be canceled. So let's stop the impulse toward canceling. Correct, engage, love, modify, transform, be provisional.
Agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree, but God dang it, why you got to be mad to the degree that you hate somebody because they say something you don't agree with? This man has been on the front line doing his music for 30 years. He's about to turn 50 years old on December 4th. What more can I say? As he said. And to acknowledge that genius, the guy who said, now all my teachers couldn't reach me and my mama couldn't beat me hard enough to match the pain of my pop not seeing me. So with that disdain and my membrane got on my pimp game, blank the world, my defense came to make the song cry. I can't see him coming down my eye, so I make the song cry. And then to be a man, to admit that he cheated on arguably the most beloved woman on the globe, and to own up to it. He could have played it off. Beyonce didn't name his name on Lemonade, which is why it potentially was going to be the greatest diss record of all time. I'll tell you why. Because you ain't named nobody. Whoever the shoe fits, right? Whom the cat fit, right? She ain't named no names.
She kind of did, though.
I think we knew who she was talking about.
When she said, big homie better grow up.
Whatever, dude. Big homie's a lot of people.
But everybody know that's Jay, though.
But that's the brilliance of her signification.
She talks about the
that's
elevator.
Wait a minute. That's the brilliance of signifying. See, you ain't got to, if
goes
you want to
down in the
cancel
elevator.
somebody, you ain't got to cancel them, right? Signify. And what did he do? He stepped up to the plate. The man owned up to it and literally said, I apologize. Not in poetically clever fashion, but in direct communication that allowed him to articulate a clear message.
Yes, sir.
Of apology and atonement for the sin created, and to understand the necessity of therapy, to acknowledge his mother as a lesbian, to talk about the virtue and value of therapy, and to engage the demons that had clouded his mind to make him believe that your masculinity resides in your ability to bed women as opposed to share the bed with a woman who's your equal.
That's right.
There you go.
I mean, that kind of maturity, but you're going to cancel that because you disagree with him on one issue? Hove is a genius. Hove is a great man. Not because we have been mesmerized by his gift, though we have been. Not because his poetic inventiveness and rhetorical genius is so remarkable that it demands repeated listening. It does. He is a great man because he's been willing to grow and evolve and to tell the truth along the way. You know, allow me to reintroduce myself. And look, and saying, ain't no sense in lying and saying I can blame my environment. The vibe is still in my vein, right? I ain't gonna say, oh, it was the society that forced me. I want to do this. There's something about it that is seductive to me. But he says you can change, but that's just the top layer. You was who you was before you got here, player, right? And so he's giving us philosophical discussions about the conundrum of identity. He's engaging us philosophically on a number of things. And as I point out in the book, he's talking about slavery. He's talking about social injustice. He's dealing with criminal justice reform. I mean, all in the music. And we miss it because he's so clever and he's so sharp that we have to go back and think about the underpinnings of what this man has done. So the reason I wrote that book on his 50th birthday is to try to remind us of the peculiar appeal and the unique genius of a lasting American icon.
My man, Michael Eric Dyson.
Well, thank you so much for that.
That's right.
Does Jay-Z have a copy of the book already?
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
I got a couple more questions, but we don't have another 2 hours, so.
Oh, my
I
God.
appreciate you.
Cancel. This is what I believe in, cancel culture. Cancel everybody else and keep me on. Thank
Mike,
y'all
it's,
so
out,
much.
it's out right now. Make sure you go get it. Jay-Z Made in America by Michael Eric Dyson. Appreciate you, my brother. Always
Thank
a pleasure.
y'all.
It's
Thank
the
y'all
Breakfast
for having
Club.
me.